Life 30, your 30-day journey to creating the best life possible for yourself. You can just watch this video or can sign up for free and get the bonus companion worksheets that go along with each video by checking the link down in the description below. All right, today is day 29 and we're going to learn how to be better speakers.
Most leaders, most business people, most entrepreneurs, most human beings have never learned to be masterful communicators. And the very nature of influence and impact, which is the leader's job, is communication. I mean, in school, were you given a communication course? Very few people have been taught that. In your personal relationships, have you read books on communication? Well, that leads to, in an intimate relationship, or even just with a friend, it's the little miscommunications that over time stack into loss. In your intimate relationships, it's the little conversations that you could have had in 5 minutes if you had the tools to communicate and the awareness to speak. So literally, you could release the anger and build understanding and speak out your needs and feel the need to be heard. All those little things, if you had learned how to do that and done it in 5 minutes with your intimate partner, you might not have lost the relationship. And in your professional life, learning to communicate inspires your teammates. You know, if you look at the great leaders of humanity, the Nelson Mandelas, the Mother Teresas, the Martin Luther King Jr.'s, the John F. Kennedys, if you look at the great business builders, Steve Jobs, great example, right? He would be on the stage at the product launch and then that favorite line, one more thing. And that's when he would reveal the latest piece of technology that would create industry dominance when Steve Jobs was at Apple. Well, he was a masterful communicator, and Bud Tribble over at Apple called it his reality distortion field. Steve Jobs was a master salesman. He knew exactly what to say to get people to believe in the impossible, to allow their I can't to be less valuable than their I can't. Second element in terms of how legendary leaders speak is they're masterful listeners. Another gargantuan competitive advantage. How the great leaders do it is they're just so comfortable in their own skin. They've worked on their ego so much, they've turned down the volume. Most people's idea of listening is waiting until the other person has finished talking so they can start their own monologue. I can't tell you how many times I'll have a walk with someone. I love walking meetings, 1 hour walks. I learned it from Steve Jobs. And through the entire walk, they're just sharing their story and they're sharing where they're at and they're sharing their frustrations and they're sharing their insecurities. And they haven't asked me a single question. And I'm happy to help. I'm happy to listen. Someone asked me the other night, when that happens, what do you do? And I say, you know what? Most people have a deep need to be heard. And someone who talks and talks and talks and talks is generally a child who had parents who didn't give them a lot of time. And they didn't give them a lot of attention, and they certainly didn't give them very much listening. And so adults are nothing more than deteriorated children, and adults are often children in grown-up bodies. And I see that, and I simply am very happy to be a listening ear for them. I'm very happy to give them the listening they are longing for. And I just feel in that hour, I can be an instrument of service to them and helpful to them by listening. Point I'm trying to help you calibrate and hardwire in as a daily protocol. Be one of the rare few, one of the top 5% leaders on the planet who really have dialed in to listening, not from your head, but from your heart. Listening at a cellular level. And here's the thing. When you do that for your team, they grow bigger right in front of you. And the real job of a leader is to grow people. Real job of a leader is to build more leaders. Real job of a leader is to leave a blazing trail of epic producers behind you. That's when you know that you're leading versus following. So get seriously genius at listening.
Rarely are we instant experts. You may have a particular gift or affinity towards something, but you still get better. People would pay me high compliments when I started speaking, and then people who've seen me a year or two later say that I'm even better, and I feel it.
Why is that?
Because you learn more. I think that hubris is dangerous. I think to think that you're an expert in anything is a foolish pursuit. You're never as good as you could be. There's always room for improvement. There's always room to get better. That doesn't mean you have to listen to all the advice. Not necessarily does everybody know best, but to believe that you can be better, and to believe that you can offer more is a constant pursuit. I used to think being a public speaker meant being poised and presenting in a way that was compelling and speaking at the right pace, and that's a part of it. But I have been taking more risks lately, doing things that are very unstructured and very uncomfortable. And I will now do, like if I have an hour to speak, I'd rather speak for 20 minutes and do 40 minutes worth of questions. Mm-hmm. And who knows how that's going to go. And that to me is the best. And so I'm a better speaker because now I'm way more open to the unknown, where a few years ago that would have scared me.
Nelson Mandela is a particularly special case study in the leadership world because he is universally regarded as a great leader. You can take other personalities, and depending on the nation you go to, we have different opinions about other personalities. But Nelson Mandela across the world is universally regarded as a great leader. He was actually the son of a tribal chief. And he was asked one day, "How did you learn to be a great leader?" And he responded that he would go with his father to tribal meetings. And he remembers two things when his father would meet with other elders. One, they would always sit in a circle. And two, his father was always the last to speak. You will be told your whole life that you need to learn to listen. I would say that you need to learn to be the last to speak. I see it in boardrooms every day of the week. Even people who consider themselves good leaders, who may actually be decent leaders, will walk into a room and say, "Here's the problem, here's what I think, but I'm interested in your opinion, let's go around the room." It's too late. The skill to hold your opinions to yourself until everyone has spoken does two things. One, it gives everybody else the feeling that they have been heard. It gives everyone else the ability to feel that they have contributed. And two, you get the benefit of hearing what everybody else has to think before you render your opinion. The skill is really to keep your opinions to yourself. If you agree with somebody, don't nod yes. If you disagree with somebody, don't nod no. Simply sit there, take it all in, and the only thing you're allowed to do is ask questions so that you can understand what they mean and why they have the opinion that they have. You must understand from where they are speaking, why they have the opinion they have, not just what they are saying. And at the end, you will get your turn. It sounds easy, it's not. Practice being the last to speak. That's what Nelson Mandela did.
There is something that always works to get rapport, and it's something called matching and mirroring. The person who pointed out was Milton Erickson. He understood that you have both a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. And he knew the subconscious is more powerful. It's the part that makes your heart beat 100,000 times a day without having to think about it. And he began to notice something about human beings, that when human beings got together, if they got in rapport, a relationship of responsiveness, they became like each other in a variety of ways. What he called, they mirrored each other. But here's the basis of it. People like people who are like whom? Themselves. And people don't like people who are not like themselves. To be more specific, write this down. People like people who are like themselves or who are like how they would like to be. Now, if you want to be effective then, mirroring is so easy. We do it naturally, but here's the problem. Most people wait till they have enough words in common that then they put the voice in common and the body in common. But words are only 7%, they don't work all the time. Breathing's very powerful, one of the most powerful. If you breathe at the exact same pace as another person, you will feel what they are feeling, period. But you got to be breathing from the same location, the same tempo. And breathing is magnificent because it really hooks you to this person. You don't have to mirror everything someone does to have rapport. It's not like they lift their leg, you lift your leg, they lean forward, you lean forward, they sit back, you sit back. You don't have to do that, although believe it or not, you can do it a lot and people not even notice. But for example, you can get rapport just with the leg position and maybe the tone of voice, because physiology is 55% of communication. If you're sitting there, let's say you cross your leg like this. Can I cross my leg like this while we're talking? Yes or no? It'll feel comfortable to you. So you start bouncing your foot like this, back and forth. Can I bounce my foot at the same tempo? If I do, you'll feel totally connected to me.
Enthusiasm. I mean, look at the video of me coming out on stage. Watch me interact with the audience. Watch me on any of my YouTube videos. Listen to my podcast, HPX Podcast. It's like everything that I believe about HPX, which stands for the High Performance Experience, is about the enthusiasm and zest we must have for life, or that we must generate and create. And so I'm just enthusiastic on stage, even if I'm scared, even if I'm worried, even if I'm concerned. And I mean, certainly walking out in front of thousands of people wasn't my original jam. I mean, I was that person who was not good at that, did not have skill in that, and did not want to do that. But the reason that I became a good communicator and challenged myself to become a good communicator was because I realized if I couldn't communicate well, I couldn't make a good difference. If you don't teach yourself, train yourself, put yourself in those situations where you become a better speaker, a better communicator, a better leader, then how are you ever going to change the world? How are you ever going to do something that you feel is like significant and important? So I trained myself to do that. So I make sure that I'm enthusiastic for my topic and my mission and my purpose when I go out on that stage. It's about them. Even if inside I feel anxiety, I feel like I don't know if I'm going to do a good job. Those things, listen, when your fear becomes secondary to your enthusiasm for your purpose, that's when everything changes. That was a life truth, by the way.
If you're going to speak about something, you need to know a lot about it. You need to know 3 or 4 times as much as you're going to speak about at minimum. So first of all, you have to do your background research. You have to have multiple stories at hand that you can use to illustrate your point. And you have to have a point. You have to organize what you're talking about around a problem. So before I go on stage to speak on my tour, I always sit for half an hour, some of which involves usually about 5 minutes of anxiety. And I think, okay, there's a problem I'm trying to address tonight, a central problem or a theme. What is it? It might be courage, it might be responsibility, it might be meaning. I think, and that serves as an organizing principle. So that would be the point. And then basically I organize, say, a dozen stories around that, and I can kind of arrange them in it as a journey. And it's a journey that circles the main point. And so I'm trying to explore it, to say what I think about courage, let's say, but to take what I'm thinking farther than I've taken it already. And so that I can plot out, little 5-minute stories that I have that are associated with courage. And then I can talk to the audience. And I would say, talk about what you know. Use your personal experience, because that's something that you're actually a master of. You can bring in other material, but it has to be tied to the real world through your own experience. Otherwise, it's not real. It's also very good to speak directly to the audience, to the individuals in the audience, because I'm always looking at a single person, one after another, and focusing on them and talking to them, just like you'd have a conversation with someone. And that way I can see if they're following along. And I'm always listening to the audience. What I really like to hear from the audience is no noise at all, silence. Because if the audience, especially, if it's a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand people, if the audience is dead silent, then I know that I'm on the right track. You're telling stories, so every fact that you relate, or every set of facts, has to be tied to a story. There has to be a meaningful output, which is something like, why is it important to your life that you know this fact? How is it related to how you're going to conduct yourself moving forward, or how you're going to see the world? So, because that's kind of the essence of meaning. How does this fact change the way you perceive the world or act in the world? That's the meaning of the fact. And facts without meaning are dull. So you need to know that. You need to tell the truth. That's for sure. And I mean, for me, my talks are really, they're an attempt to explore a set of ideas in the most truthful way that I can manage. And that's also an adventure, because letting yourself speak freely about a topic, you don't always know where it's going to go. And so, but that also hooks in the audience, because they're along for the ride, right? And there's a risk. The risk is you might forget where you are, you might lose the thread, you might say something you regret, you might get confused. And it's this, the talk should be a process of exploration, like a journey that you're taking the audience along on. It's the same when you're reading a novel. Like, a great novel isn't exactly plotted out from beginning to end to begin with. The author is taking himself or herself and you on an intellectual adventure through the character development, and the characters have to be allowed to live and to express themselves, and the novel needs to unfold. It's like a colloquy between the conscious mind and the unconscious source of inspiration. And the novel is actually a journey through a characterological landscape, and the author shouldn't know where he or she's going to end up at the beginning. Same with an artist and who's writing a song or a piece of music or a piece of visual art. There has to be play and exploration along the way. And so you also don't want to deliver an over-prepared talk, in my estimation, or at least that's not how I do it. You want to have a theme, you want to have a body of knowledge from which you can draw on, and then you want to be actively exploring the idea in front of the audience. And that's very gripping for everyone, including you. And you should learn something from the talk. It's an opportunity to think on your feet. And anyways, that's my style of lecturing. It's a trapeze act without a safety net, I would say. And that's part of what makes it gripping, is that there's a high probability of failure. And I would say with any performance that's going to be gripping, that on the edge of the seat gripping, there has to be a high probability of failure. And that's why I don't speak with notes. If you speak with notes, which you might have to if you're a beginning speaker, then you cannot fail, because you can always read the notes. And so there's a net. You'll fall in the net, but you won't die. But you'll never do anything spectacular. So that's the thing, is if you're going to do something spectacular, you have to take the risk. And if you're going to take the risk, you have to think on your feet.
There are certain commonalities to all human beings, right? When it comes to rapport, getting into rapport, both in a business setting and in a personal setting, but it really boils down to two things. Number one, that you care.
Yes.
That in business, you're not just there to make a sale to earn a commission. You actually care about the person and you want them to get the outcome they're looking for. That's number one. And number two is that I'm just like you. And not like everything you like, I like. That's disingenuous bullshit, right?
Yeah.
Like, you see a fish in the wall. Oh my God, you like the fish island. You start bullshitting about.
Yeah,
that's
like
not,
Michael Scott in The Office.
That's ridiculous,
like
right?
that.
I'm talking about something very different. I'm talking about that you speak at the same general pace they do.
Yep.
That when they answer a question like, yup, got, oh, ooh, the interest that you see, yup, I get it, we're on the same page.
Yeah.
And it's almost below the surface, because here's the thing. Imagine, you just meet a salesman, you're a prospect, right? And the salesman looks at you and says, I really care about you. And you'll say, what the bullshit you care? You want to make it, the word, see, in the beginning, there's no words you can say, I care about you. Over time, of course, you give great service, you have a relationship. Yes, you can tell someone I care, and I've proved that. But in an initial contact, that's so disingenuous. So how do you get that across? Through tonality and body language. That's how you do it.
Never make a point without a story, and never tell a story without a point. That's number one. That's key, because stories can be used to transform people's lives.
Right? Yeah.
Not just anchor the points, but it creates a significant emotional event. And that's how human behavior is transformed. We have emotional memory. The next thing in speaking, there is some fear, and that fear is always there. I never assume that I know what that audience is going to believe. Each audience, they have their own personality, and each audience, their audience inside of each audience is separated by age, by race, by income, by education. The other thing that's crucial in speaking is that as you speak and as you look at the audience, always take the time to find out who they are and all that get understanding. So I have a needs assessment that I sent out, and I asked them questions. What are the things that you want this audience to walk away with? What are the things that you've done? Things that's stressing you out? What's the unspoken conversation? So I sent out this needs assessment. I talk with the CEO. I do research to find out their mission statement. I talk to the marketing director, and then I interview the top performers. If it's a sales organization, I talk to the top performers. And then the next step, I interview people in the audience. If you were in my position, what are the things that people in the audience need to hear if you were in my position that you would suggest? I ask them individually, these 5 people. And then when I'm on stage, I integrate that. I marry that to navigate an experience. As I said, Oliver Wendell Holmes said that once a man or woman's mind has been expanded with an idea, concept, or experience, it can never be satisfied to going back to where it was. So when you bring all of those elements in there with humor, with quotes, statistics, and stories, you are able to create special moments that can transform that audience. The other thing, when you tell a story, don't just tell the story. Experience the story, and the audience will go there with you.
Be the story.
Yes, you've got to be the story, the embodiment of the story, so that the audience, as a result of hearing it, that they can't rest, that you start showing up in their dreams.
My first time I talked, I literally went up and blanked out. Like, I literally could not think. I could not see the card. How I fixed it speaking was over time, but I'll give you a couple of key things on speaking for everybody. One, I had to figure out, what someone said to me, because you love baseball. You don't stutter when you talk about baseball. You don't get insecure. I go, well, I love that and I believe in it. They're like, oh, you talk about your kids. You're great. I thought, oh, there's a correlation here between me actually saying what I believe and what I'm passionate about and my ability to communicate it. And so now my first layer is always, I must be passionate about it and I must believe it, and I'm never doing an impression of another person. So I always come from a place of saying what I really believe, because you can't transfer to somebody that which you don't experience yourself. I can give you passion, I can give you energy, I can give you my belief if I'm experiencing it. Big key as a speaker, I'll give everybody. Stop trying to convince everybody of what you're saying. That's not the threshold of being a good communicator. People do not need to believe what you're saying. They need to believe you believe what you're saying. And as long as they believe you believe what you're saying, you're an effective speaker. I stopped trying to get people to believe me. There's a neediness. There's a salesmanship to that. I stopped that. It's a subtle difference. I just want you to believe I believe it. That's influence. Influence is you believe I believe it.
What I'm about to tell you to do is terrifying, and most of us spend our entire lives trying to avoid it. But, like a pap smear, it's over fast, and it really works. I just did it. Did you catch it? If not, and you missed it, here it goes again. That was a live demonstration of the 3-second IAP, the intentional awkward pause.
Oh my God, this is so awkward.
Now, why on God's green earth would you ever want to do that? I'll tell you, because being a really, really good listener is one of the most underrated secrets to success. It's crucial if you want to be more charismatic, more persuasive, and a better negotiator. Plus, really listening to someone and having them feel truly heard is one of the biggest gifts you could ever give. The problem is most of us suck at listening and we don't even know it. We're always interrupting others with our brilliant ideas and our feedback, and most often it's the way—
Oh my God, that is so true. I'm always interrupting people.
As I was saying, it's often the way that we suck the most. Now, I'm probably one of the worst offenders out there, but I am consistently working on this, and I have to say the IAP is a lifesaver. Not so long ago, I used it with my stepson, Zane, and had an unbelievable result. So Zane was home on Christmas break from college, and he invited me to go for cappuccinos. So a little backstory here. In the 10 years plus that we've been in each other's lives, he had never really asked me for life advice. So we get to this place, Cafe Minerva, and we're hanging out. And Zane starts to tell me all about his life and what he might want to do with it. He's very, very involved with music. He's involved in acting and all these creative things. So basically, he's asking me for the kind of advice that I give for a living. So you could imagine every single part of me just wanted to jump in and tell him what to do and tell him what I think and yada, yada, yada. But I practiced the IAP and I just sat there and I zipped it. Now, every time I did this and I just shut up, it was amazing because he would just reveal more and more insights. He'd find new things to talk about. He'd find his own insights that were way better than anything I could have told him. And it was really, really amazing. Now, I have to be honest, my body was literally uncomfortable being silent. So every time he would come to an end of a sentence, I would sit and see if there was more. And it was absolutely awesome. By the end of 3 hours, we had the most beautiful conversation, and we left that cafe feeling more connected and more intimate than I think we've ever felt. So just a little story to show that it really, really works.
I used to get nervous when I walk up to the stage when all I could focus on is me. I was so concerned about what people think. What do I sound professional? Would they understand my accent? Oh man, make sure I cover every point I want to cover. Am I telling that story perfectly? And do I sound smart? Do I look good? Whenever you are in front of an audience and you focus on yourself, me, how people perceive you, you will get nervous because you are afraid of being judged. When I shift the focus from do I sound smart? Do I look good? Do I sound good? When I just forget all that shit and throw that out the window and I 100% focus on my audience. How could I change their life? How can I impact them? How can I make sure they walk away with value? The minute I do that, not focusing on myself, but focusing on them, the nervousness disappears. It's gone. Very, very simple. Because it's all about them. It's my hand in my pocket. Am I not standing in the right space? Am I walking back and forth? Am I doing the right gesture? Forget all that shit. When you forget all that shit, you can connect. And when you connect with the audience, you're not nervous. Because all you care is about them. You don't care about how you look anymore. You don't care if you sound so smart. No, you just focus on them. No more nervousness.
Sometimes when I get asked to speak for 3 hours and they want to do Q&A, that's a different talk than it is from an hour to just give a presentation than it is from, hey, can you give a 10-minute talk here? Then a 5-minute talk. If I'm asked to talk 5 minutes on TV or on whatever it is that I'm speaking for 5 minutes, here's a point, here's a story, done. Let me tell you about what's going on over here. Here's the conditions that we're looking at right now. Here's what I think we need to consider changing to. And here's what I believe will be the solution. Let me tell you why I believe this. I remember when it was 1992 and boom, story. Okay, story. So get into your story. When you wanted to make your point, tell stories. Somebody who is very good at making stories and figuring out ways for me to take a metaphor or an analogy that I connect. That makes sense. I get it. I got it. I respond to that, and most people respond to that as well if you're telling your story.
Now I've got a really special bonus clip that I think you're going to enjoy. But before that, it's time for the best Live 30 questions of the day. It's not enough to just watch a video. You have to do something about it. So pull out your worksheets. And if you don't have the worksheets, you can get them for free using the link in the description below. Here we go. Question number 1. How will you practice building rapport this week? Number 2. How will you practice speaking this week? And number 3. How will you practice telling great stories this week? And if you're doing the Best Live 30 challenge with me, I want to celebrate you. Give me a hashtag BestLive30 down in the comments below. Communication is one of the most important skills that entrepreneurs need to have, and I think a lot of businesses fail because the entrepreneur cannot communicate well, and if they even are sharing their ideas, they are not convincing enough, and so a lot of great ideas die. You could have the next greatest idea that can change the world. It's sitting up here. But because you can't articulate it, because you can't share it, because you can't communicate it well, and because you're not convincing enough to the people around you, it will never take off. The idea will die within you, and I hate that. I hate that because building a business, getting the thing that's out here out into the world is greater than one person. No matter how much of a genius you are, to build a business, you need a team. You need a team of people to help you go far, and you also need to convince the media and customers and partners and suppliers that what you have is amazing. If you are the only one who thinks that your idea is amazing and you can't communicate or convince anybody else of that, then you're done. Then that idea dies within you, and I think, unfortunately, that's a lot of entrepreneurs. So Jordan has 3 of his tips. I'm gonna give you 3 of mine on how to be a convincing communicator. Step number 1 is have a powerful opinion. You have an opinion. What is it that you are trying to say? Make it mean something to yourself and to me, and make that the first sentence of every piece of content that you make. If you're doing a video, that's your first sentence. You're doing an Instagram post, put it in there. You're doing a LinkedIn post, an email, a newsletter, like put it in there. You lead with your powerful opinion on what is wrong with the world or what your viewpoint on XYZ topic is. Make it mean something to me, make me care. So if I'm talking about communication, how important it is for entrepreneurs, a powerful opinion would be something like, you need to learn how to communicate in your business, or you will never get that idea that's in your head out into the world, and your idea will die inside you. That's an opinion. Where lots of people might say something like, so if you want to learn how to build a successful business and maybe take your idea to the next level, I think maybe you should focus on trying to improve how you speak and communicate. Like, it's so long, it has lots of filler words. You use words like maybe and potentially and someday and one day and I wish and we instead of I, like affirmative. Stop worrying about what people's reactions are gonna be and speak your truth. Always lead with a powerful opinion.